Pinkamania sobbed into Octavia's coat. The older sister had been doing her best to comfort her younger sister, but no matter what she tried, she couldn't get that filly to sleep. Pinkamania had barely eaten. She refused to sleep and was constantly sobbing. Octavia had no idea what it was that her sister had seen, but all she knew was that Bellamina was dead, and the fact alone seemed to have Pinkamania jumped into the shadows. "Oh my, I hear crying," came a soft, soothing voice. "Grammy Pie," Octavia said, surprised, looking up to see their grandmother walking into the dark room, carrying a lantern. "Grammy?" Pinkamania sniffled as she saw her grandmother. "It's me, child," she smiled warmly as she walked closer, placing the lantern on the nightstand, then nuzzling the crying filly. "What troubles you?" The sound of her gentle voice seemed to soothe something deep in the filly's soul. Pinkamania's sobs slowly turned to sniffles as she composed herself enough to speak before her grandmother. "Bellamina's dead, Grammy." Pinkamania choked a little. "Yes, I know, dear. It's a fact we all must deal with now," Grammy said solemnly. "We all have done our fair share of mourning, and now we shall forever mourn for her loss. But your tears seem to have hide something more, my child. They seem to hide more than just your loss." Pinkamania then rubbed her eyes as she sniffled, looking away from her grandmother, burying her head into the Octavia's coat. "I'm never throwing another party for as long as I live," she sobbed. "Oh, child, why you must say such a thing? You know you love your parties, and you love to throw them," Grammy Pie said, surprised at the sudden words from her granddaughter. But my party's got Bellamina killed." She sobbed the words out into Octavia's coat. Octavia did her best to try and comfort the filly. Their grandmother looked a bit sad, but closed her eyes as she seemed to have understand. "My dear Pinkamania, if nothing else, you should continue to throw your parties." She spoke softly, but truly. "Huh?" Pinkamania and Octavia said in allusion, until they both turned to look at their grandmother. "You see, dear Pinkamania, your sister loved your parties. She truly had fun at them. Sometimes all she could talk about with me was just how much fun she had at your last party." Grammy Pie chuckled softly to herself as she remembered. "Which is why I'm telling you to continue throwing your parties, child, in honor and memory of your sister. Your sister would not want you to live the rest of your life being afraid and crying. She would want you to see you're smiling for the rest of your days." Grammy Pie's smile was warm and was the words that spoke right out with truth. But, Pinkamania sniffled as she tried to comprehend her grandmother's words, being the only filly, as she was. "But the world is so scary, Grammy. How will I have to smile in it?" "Very simple, my child," she chuckled herself softly. "You have to laugh your fears away." "Laugh?" Pinkamania asked curiously. It was a lesson she had remembered often from her childhood. Her grandmother would often visit her and teach her how to laugh her fears, stand up to the shadows, and to the idea of monsters, laughed at her fears away. She could fear anything in the world that had thrown at her for so long that she had the inner strength to laugh when the day was over. She had forgotten about why her grandmother had repeated the lesson so often to her. Her memories before she had just the thought of it because she had been afraid of the dark as a filly. She now knew it was because of something much deeper. A small smile crept onto her face as she remembered the memories that she had forgotten now. All the memories, the bad memories, the good, the ugly ones, the beautiful ones. She had locked them all away to keep herself happy, and tried to keep Bellamina's wishes true. She hadn't been all ready to accept the memories into her heart, and in fact, she carefully lifted the last of her rooms, contained her memories. She could feel the slow, rhythmic beats of her heart that resonated loudly through her. A smile was on her face as she remembered her sister fondly. "So there's just one last thing you gotta do then," she said, as she then looked into the door at the end of the hallway. She then slowly walked towards it, her resolution slowly firm in her heart. She knew what she had to do now. She opened the door, stepping out. Outside of the door, she knew the 4 torches lit around the open area, a pathway that was lit for her leading to it. A fence was placed along the path line area so she wouldn't go anywhere else. She gently put her lantern away as she walked towards the center of the arena. She could feel all the small tremors shaking through the world as she walked. As she walked to one side of the arena, from the ground on the opposite side of the slender pony, it emerged from the ground. He stood over her tall, his presence still bearing down. But she wasn't afraid this time. "I finally understand now," Pinkie said softly, shaking her head slowly before looking at the slender pony with a smile. "My fear of your presence, your statue over me, your very existence. You're the Colt, aren't you?" The slender pony just stood there, unchanging from Pinkie's words. "Well, you're not exactly him, but you're my image of him." She closed her eyes and smiled, "Which means I'm not afraid of you anymore." The slender pony began to walk towards her. Every step seemed to echo across the arena. Pinkie then opened her eyes as she watched the pony walk towards her, her mouth beginning to quiver as she saw him getting closer. She felt the haze beginning to hit her mind, the phonograph letting out its static. She stood firm where she was, remembering fondly with the words of her grandmother, the memories of her younger sister, of her friends back in Ponyville, of all the fun she had had throughout her life thanks to the help of everyone else that she's known and gave to her. All of them had helped her have a life that she could ever be proud of. The slender pony then stood from a few feet behind from her, but the haze they brought to her mind began to fade. Her quivering mouth puckered up for a moment before a soft sound came from it. It started off low as it slowly gained in foot side and inside of Pinkie. The confidence then grew with her with each sound that came through her. The haze lifting, the static of the phonograph becoming more quiet. Ha 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 ha. She was laughing. She was laughing at the fear at this pony, knowing that the whole town had brought upon her, just so she could become strong enough to face her fears. She laughed and she giggled, she snorted, she chuckled. It felt like it's been a lifetime since she let out a last laugh. She had let out so many tears that had been pent up for years, so many pains and torments that she had kept inside. For the first time in a long while, she laughed with all of her heart. A bright light soon shone from her neck, as a golden necklace with a blue balloon gem appeared. Her laughter continued, as the light from the necklace made the slender pony jump back, letting out a shrilling cry as it seemed to hurt him. The entire area began to shake with a gigantic tremor as it began to fall apart. All the scenery around her soon began to fall into the bottomless pit lay beneath them. The whole entire world was crumbling and shattering around them. The slender pony let out another painful roar as he dissolved back into the ground, disappearing from Pinkie's sight. She calmed her laughing enough so that she could speak. "I won't forget you, Mr. Colt, and I don't think I could ever truly forgive you for what you did, but I can move on now." She then closed her eyes, and she smiled brightly. The golden necklace around her neck shined brightly as it shot a gleam of light towards, hitting the air, forming into a door of light. The necklace then vanished to the wait for the next time, for when it would truly need it. "It's time for me to head home, for real this time," Pinkie smiled happily, as she walked towards the door of the light, the last world of it crumbling away behind her.